So today we're going to talk about some slightly heavier topics that often get brushed under the rug with the simple statement of circumstances don't matter. And saying that too much can accidentally cause you to feel even worse about yourself and to kind of gaslight yourself and to deny the true human emotional experience that goes along with having temporarily extreme, devastating circumstances happening in your life. So today we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about, in a real way, how do you manifest when there are devastating circumstances happening in your 3D reality. And when I say devastating circumstances, I do mean things like extreme poverty, abuse, miscarriages, even third parties. I know we talk about third parties so much that it can almost seem like that's like, oh, whatever, third parties. But, having a third party in your relationship is a devastating circumstance. So things that are really triggering, things that are really like, that to you feel like a really big deal, deaths, extreme illness, things like that, those kinds of things they're devastating circumstances to human beings. And so I want to talk about that in a way that's not just a simple like, oh, whatever, circumstances don't matter, because that's not fucking helpful to you or to anyone to say that in such a gaslighting way. So let's talk about this. So before we go deeper into this, my name is Genevieve. I am a manifestation coach, and I mainly talk about law of assumption type of ideas and principles. But I also talk about other things like somatic things, emotional things that I found to be very complementary to how do you really process old states of being so that you can really trust your new state of being. I have links below in the description for all kinds of different ways that you can work with me. I highly recommend doing the courses in terms of if you have a limited amount of money and you want to work with me in some way, the best thing to invest in for you is going to be a course. I have a 31-day self-concept course, which is probably the best thing for everyone to do. But I also have a 21-day master course in manifesting a specific person, because those courses will give you a very structured and in-depth way that will help you to feel supported and sustain a shift over time. Of course, you can also do a call with me. Of course you can, if you really want to. We can get more deeply into your specific circumstances, your questions about your own life. Like that can be really helpful and validating. Just have someone to talk to and process this in a healthy way. So that's really what the one-on-ones are for. So check out the links below if my style of coaching resonates with you and you really want to really get deeper in your manifestation practice in a much healthier way where you're not gaslighting yourself. You're not feeling like there's something you must be doing or doing wrong and that's why things aren't working out for you. That is not a helpful assumption to be making about yourself. And I guess that's where I'll start with this thing that we hear constantly of, circumstances don't matter, and how that is really a harmful thing to say to somebody who is going through something extremely difficult, like processing the death of a loved one, or again, extreme poverty, multiple miscarriages, even a break. If we're being honest, a breakup is also a very devastating circumstance. Like being rejected, being broken up with by someone that you really deeply love and, thought you were going to spend your life with, that's a pretty devastating circumstance. So the more I speak, the more I'm like, wow, circumstances, they've got a lot of heavy hitting punches with them. Certain circumstances do. So I don't want you to keep gaslighting yourself into thinking that you did something wrong to cause this, because that's another really inappropriate meaning that we're accidentally kind of like applying to the everyone is you pushed out thing and the circumstances don't matter thing. Like it's like this implication that if you were just better, if you were just, more healed, if you were just like a better person or like had a better self-concept, then, your mom wouldn't have died, or then you wouldn't have had a miscarriage, or then, you wouldn't have had this third party come along. That's really damaging to say to another person because it implies this assumption, this really damaging assumption that's like, I'm not good enough. And for a lot of you, you are already coming into manifestation in that assumption. You already came in feeling like you weren't good enough because of these devastating circumstances. And then to come into this and then to hear from a coach or a teacher that's like, yeah, you're still not good enough. You're still not good enough. The only reason things aren't working out for you is because you're still not good enough and you need to do more to be good enough. That is not at all even how manifestation works. Manifestation is not an act of doing something to get something. As if you watch me, you hear me say that all the time. It's not an act of doing something to get something. So it's not even an act of you doing things for yourself to like, it's not about you forcing yourself to feel better and then therefore your circumstances are going to magically change. Like even that mindset, even that kind of a logic is flawed because it still implies that you need to do something to be fulfilled. You need to do something to be taken care of in this life. And that's not a healthy, helpful logic to have at all. Manifestation is a result of you clearing away every limit you've had within you that told you that you weren't good enough. Manifestation is a result of everything that you took personally, everything that someone else did to you that you said, that means something about me. That person rejecting me, or that person dying, or that health issue, that happening to me, that means something about me. That means that I'm a bad person because of that health issue, or because that person did that to me. We're clearing away that. We're no longer making that assumption that any situation, any circumstance, whether it's poverty or health or rejection or miscarriage or death, we're no longer making that stuff mean anything about us. We're clearing all of that garbage away and we're saying, you know what, even in the face of these circumstances, I am still whole. I am still fulfilled. I am still myself, and I can still keep going and know that things are in some mysterious way going to work out for me. But I'm surrendered into knowing that I have no idea how or when, and it's a very mysterious unfolding, but I'm never going to give up on myself. And you can probably hear in my voice that this is like bringing out emotion in me, because this is a big, big deal. And this is kind of touching on the root of the problems that I've been feeling within the manifestation community for so long, in the sense that we keep accidentally patterning ourselves that we are the problem and we need to fix ourselves to make things happen. And if we're experiencing a devastating circumstance, that's our fault. We caused that and we're the problem and we need to fix ourselves. That, again, that whole paradigm of thinking, it just keeps you lower and lower and lower. And I want you to remember that the law of assumption in particular is simply about meaning making. And you can always make the meaning that this circumstance isn't personal, that person rejecting you, it actually doesn't have to mean anything about you. You can make that meaning. You can reclaim yourself and make whatever meaning you want out of your circumstances. And that is going to help you to actually detach from the circumstances, because to get to kind of the first, I guess, point when it comes to like, how do you navigate and manifest through really devastating hardships and circumstances, is you have to, one, process them, but process them in a way that gets you to healthy detachment from the circumstance, that you're no longer making the circumstance mean something about you. And what this really means is you've got to really just allow yourself to have your feelings about things, because another huge problem I see in terms of like gaslighting that's going on in a very incorrect manner in the manifestation community is people say, oh, well, I created that, so I don't really have a right to feel anything about it because, I created that he left me. So therefore, I can't have feelings about it. That is so weird that you would put that on yourself. Like, just because you created a circumstance, just because you engaged and you identified with a circumstance, that doesn't mean that you are just going to not feel the human experience that came to you because you created that circumstance or that event. You still need to deal with whatever you put yourself through around that thing, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a death, whether it's extreme poverty, whether it's the miscarriages or whatever it is. Just because you created it, that doesn't mean that you don't have a right to feel your feelings. Like, what kind of gaslight crazy bullshit is that? It's actually really how you get through it, in my own personal experience, is you fully surrender yourself to process whatever feelings you also created around the experience of that poverty or that thing. Like, you really just need to give yourself to, like, I felt so sad through the process of that devastating thing that happened to me. And I love myself enough, or I just trust myself enough, whatever you want to say to yourself that makes sense to you, I trust myself enough to just let myself feel that sadness. Because also, newsflash, probably the reason you created that thing to begin with is because you had repressed, unprocessed sadness that was feeding into an identity within you, an I am, that says I'm not enough, or something like that. Like, that's how these old stories work. They're so powerful and latent in our subconscious because they're feeding off of old emotions within us that we never felt safe enough to process. So all those feelings of anger that you've been storing up since your early childhood that you never got to express, and all those feelings of sadness and grief that you pushed down because you felt like you had to, keep a stiff upper lip and muddle through and just pretend to be confident on the outside and just keep pushing through, and you repressed all that very human, very powerful emotion creation juice, because that's kind of what emotion is. Emotions are like the fuel for manifestations. It's like your mind is like the focusing target, but it draws on your emotions to make the fuel for them to actually come into fruition. So if you're cut off from those emotions because you don't trust yourself enough to feel them, you don't allow yourself to process them, and you continue to make your emotions mean bad things about you. Like, oh, if I feel sad, that means bad things are going to happen. I can't feel sad, or I can't ever be angry because if I'm angry, then people will leave me. If you're making those assumptions, then yeah, you're creating circumstances where people leave you because you're making your anger mean that. But when you just allow yourself in that raw way to simply have your feelings, process them directly, and acknowledge, yeah, I'm angry. I have a lot of anger. I don't deserve to be in this kind of poverty, or I don't deserve to be treated in this way. I don't deserve to have miscarriages or these health issues or whatever it is, and to really allow yourself to become empowered through your anger. Anger is a great empowering emotion that really gets you back into your full selfness. So really allow yourself to have that. That's like the first step when it comes to really overcoming these devastating circumstances, is stop making it mean what you've always made it mean, and stop listening to any manifestation coach that gaslights you in all the ways that I just said. That like, well, you created it so you can't feel it, or circumstances don't matter, and just ignore, like in a very like gaslighty way, just ignore that you've had miscarriages or deaths in your life that are tragic and devastating. Just ignore that and just pretend they never happened. That's insane. Like, that's insane that any human would say that to another human, and I cannot tolerate it anymore because it's also not helpful. It's causing you to get even more fucked up in manifestations, and you don't feel good, and that's why your 3D also looks like shit. So you've got to address this in a different way. You can tell I'm very fired up about this, so glad you're here and we're processing this together. So that's really the big one, like this processing and detaching. And when I say detaching, I mean specifically in that you're no longer making that circumstance mean that you're not fulfilled, or mean that you're not whole, or mean that you're not enough. You are reclaiming yourself from any meanings that you were giving that circumstance. And this truly means every circumstance I just listed, including the third party thing, the rejection thing, everything that I've said that's a devastating circumstance that humans, we really don't do well with these devastating circumstances. You are detaching all that meaning you used to make about you. That, oh, he chose that girl instead of me. That means I'm still not enough. We're not fucking doing that anymore. That's what detachment really means. You're no longer making that meaning at all. And then the next piece to this, which is really like getting you back into like the manifesting piece of it, is I want you to really claim who you are. Like, decide who you are and be unwavering in that, no matter the circumstances. And that's what we really mean by ignore your circumstances, is it's not that you can't appropriately react to real-time events or things that are happening. It's like, of course, you should appropriately react to things in the 3D. That's what being non-resistant to the 3D is all about, which Neville Goddard talked a lot about. That we're meant to be non-resistant to the 3D in terms of we accept whatever is playing out. We're not resisting what's playing out. And we're also very accepting of ourselves in terms of who we know we are. And we're just simply going along with whatever's playing out until our new script, or whatever you want to call it, kind of clicks into place. So there's a certain amount of acceptance and surrender in that process where, yeah, you don't know when the poverty is going to end or when the health issue is going to officially like completely clear up. You have to remain humble, but trusting that it's going to work itself out. You can't control exactly how and when. Again, there's going to be maybe even weird stuff that pops up that surprises you about it, but you're so accepting of it. You're so practicing, because you're not making it mean anything about you, practicing non-threat about the circumstance. And then, as Neville would say, continuing to do what you got to do in that script. So if you're still in the old script or the old story, you still have no money coming in, you've got bills coming up you have to pay, it's okay to address that in the 3D. You don't have to like pretend like you're so poor, or I should say, you don't have to pretend like you're not so poor and you're just pretending that you're rich, and so, you know, you're just going to ignore all your problems and just let them pile up in the 3D as if you're just going to live in a fantasy land. It's good to just keep doing what you got to do in the 3D, again, until something in the script shifts in the 3D and the new stuff starts to just kind of come in. And sometimes it'll come in slowly, and sometimes it'll come in super quickly, where you have a boom, a totally new paradigm happening in your life. And I guess it's like at this point that I want to say something about myself, because I feel like I see it in my own comments on here, and I know you guys are doing it to other manifestation coaches as well, where you kind of project onto me and other coaches that maybe I've never experienced hardship, or maybe my life is just so easy. I've got all this manifesting stuff figured out, and I've just got a perfect life, and like I'm just exalted from all of you. And that's not the case. Like 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, I was also very, very poor. I was working as a DoorDash driver as my main job because my business was doing absolutely nothing. Like I could barely pay my bills. I could barely put gas in my car, but I needed to just to do the DoorDash delivery stuff. And I had no idea what I was going to do. Like I had left my job to start my own business, and I wasn't very good in the beginning. I had no idea what I was doing. I was also still very new to manifesting at that point. And I was doing it badly, as you've heard me talk about in other videos, where like I was misunderstanding a lot of things. So I know what it's like to not be able to like pay your bills, and you have no idea what's going to happen next. But I still just kept doing what I needed to do without making it mean too much about me. Like even though I had emotional outbursts and I was frustrated, I kept learning. I kept showing up for myself, even in my confusion. I kept seeking and searching. And I'm saying this as a mirror to you to know that like, that's all we're doing here. Like you're just not giving up on yourself. You're going to keep going, and you're going to keep learning. You're going to keep practicing until that new script of your new story starts to filter in. And that's kind of how it happened for me. It was like it slowly at first started to change over to the new script. And then it was like, boom, like a year ago, like last summer is when for me things took off in a huge way. So it's like, and I had no idea it was going to happen that way. I was just like in my faith, in my trust in myself, that I am the only meaning maker of my life, that I have control over my own self, even if I don't have control over circumstances in that like direct 3D way that we wish we had control over, but I have control over myself. And that's how we manifest, is we acknowledge I'm in charge of this. I'm in charge of this reality, this perceiving machine, this meaning making machine. And I am just going to trust that the 3D is going to work itself out around me the more I stay loyal to myself. And I don't get too fixated on fixing every little fire that I see out here, as if like I'm responsible for every little fire, so I've got to put everything out. That's crazy making, and it won't work, and it's going to make you even more attached to the 3D and less attached, more self-abandoning towards yourself. So the bottom line here is I really want you to go easier on yourself. And again, I feel emotional saying this because I know I talk to you guys enough that I know what you guys are going through, and I've been there, and there's nothing wrong with you. Like, stop making that meaning that there's something wrong with you, that there's something wrong with your emotions. Having emotional availability, like I'm tapping into a little bit right now, having emotional availability is a good thing about you. That's what keeps the juice of your manifestations going. Again, your emotions are like the fuel, all of them, even your fear, even your grief is fuel for the direction that you want to go to. Never make any part of you wrong. Never give it a meaning that there's parts of you that are bad. And that is how you can navigate your way out of devastating circumstances, is You can acknowledge that they happened. You can acknowledge that you have had this horrible rejection or this miscarriage or this horrible poverty or you know, and I'm sorry if I didn't list every version of a devastating circumstance, because I know there's a lot and it's subjective to different people, but it's good for you to process whatever is happening for you in the best way you can, in which you're being loyal to showing up for yourself. Like, show up for you like you actually believe in yourself and that you can get through anything, and that you're not this horrible bad creator because you created something bad. Like, please do not listen to any more coaches that imply stuff like that. I don't think people mean to imply such gaslighty bullshit, but it's become like this. A lot of coaches are just parroting other coaches. And so it just becomes like a game of telephone where everyone's saying the same thing, and they're not even thinking through like how fucking nuts they sound, like in terms of like the damaging implications of what they're saying. They're not really thinking through like what it really means to tell someone that like, oh, you created that miscarriage, so therefore, you know, you're fucked up and you got to work on yourself, and like, what, stop making it mean that. Like, it doesn't need to mean that anymore. Let's just give it a different meaning, process it in a healthy way. So anyway, I hope this helped you today. You're not alone. You're not bad at manifesting, but you do need to take control of what are you really making things mean? Who are you really being towards yourself, about yourself, in the face of these devastating circumstances? Are you continuing to be the I am that says, yeah, I am rejected because so-and-so rejected me, or I am a failure, I am never going to have kids because I had a miscarriage, or, you know, all the different examples. So anyway, let me know your thoughts and feelings and questions in the comments below. I'm happy to answer any more questions you guys have about this, and I will talk to you again soon in my next video. All right, bye.